All right.
Okay.
Another.
Cheers. Yeah. So, I'm here with. Am I calling you?
My friends call me Bastard. I
Okay.
prefer them to call me Tokyo Toy Bastard.
Do you want me to bleep out your name?
No.
That'd be really funny. We should make it a running gag. Like, just whatever someone says your name.
No. Dave from Toy Polloi, if you're watching.
What? I feel like it's way too close to me. I'm like. Alright. Well, that's better. Much better. Okay. So we're at our. Is this our favorite?
I think this is our preferred izakaya of choice.
Yeah, this is our the most. This is probably the most accessible. It's all over our town, our city. Is this a town?
This is a city.
City? Feels like a town.
Yeah. Well,
It's not huge.
Yeah, it's a.
I mean,
yeah. Well, it's Tachikawa-shi. So it's like a city inside of a prefecture, the prefecture of Tokyo.
Right.
Tokyo, by the way, Tokyo is not just a city. Tokyo is a prefecture. It has an overall city inside of it, and it also
Right.
has a little section of it called Tokyo. That's the actual city,
Right.
but it doesn't stop there.
But like there's no visual marker that you can't obviously tell you're out of Tokyo.
Yeah,
Like,
unless you're on the highway.
yeah, basically. If you get on a train, it just the best way to think about it is like when I would go back to Gunma from Tokyo, it's like everything just got like shorter and shorter and shorter, and then there was farm, and then it come up a little bit, but then
Yeah.
it come back down, and it just kind of start doing this. When you're in Tokyo, there's just people.
Yeah,
You can Google this.
Even parts of Tokyo have countryside in them. Like today, you went to Mount Takao, right?
Yeah.
And that's technically part of Tokyo.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even I got some footage of like from the monorail, and it's like people still have like on their land. There's still like plots with like they're growing things. So.
Right. Yeah. Even Tachikawa itself has, once you get past the station area, has a lot of
Yeah.
plots of land. They're like little miniature farms and no tall buildings.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah.
Anyways,
Basically, we're in Tokyo,
yeah, we live in Japan.
and an izakaya is basically a Japanese bar. And it's not like the bar in an American sense, right?
No.
No.
It's a lot cheaper. I think it's a bit more food focused too.
Yeah. Well, some izakayas can be expensive, but
Not
like,
the ones we go to.
yeah, it's more like if you said I'm going to a bar, you would be thinking like, oh, I'm going to like a place where people just sit around and drink around a bar, right? But like most izakayas in Japan are places where it's more like the kind of Western style restaurant format where you're all at your private tables. There's no socialization between the people that are sitting in random booths and things. Like we're right now in a little booth.
Yeah. Unless unless you're
Usually.
unless you're like in an outdoor one,
Yeah.
like a Asakusa or something like that. where
Yeah,
it's
there are
like-
varying degrees of izakayas, but
But
they're
for our-
usually like this.
For our purposes, it's cheap, large amounts of beer,
Cheap and giant.
good food.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so this is our this is a new thing I'm doing on my channel, and I'm inviting join me.
Tokyo
Tokyo Toy
Bastard.
Bastard. Woo, I'm glad I bleeped that out.
Just bleep out.
Yeah. And so basically, we're calling it "Why Is It Cool?" Well, you know that because it's on the title. Why is it cool? We're gonna pick a topic and we're just gonna talk about why it's cool, because this is all we do anyways. So
Yep.
why not film it?
Yeah. This is our third time here, and that's pretty much all we do every time we come.
Third time together.
Third time together at this particular.
This one.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
this one. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so today's topic.
Dun, 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 dun.
It's our good friend, Godzilla.
Yes, and not just any Godzilla. It's Shin Godzilla. Because he's got big shins. No, that's not true.
And he's dead in the eyes. He's dead in the eyes.
So, Oliver,
Yes.
tell them, before moving to Japan, what Godzilla movies have you seen?
I don't even remember the names. I saw them as a kid, like from the video store. I would just rent random stuff, like everyone used to. And I'd see like kaiju movies, and Godzilla was kind of the cool one. But I don't, dude. Like I saw him like fight Mothra once.
Yeah.
I saw him fight Zero. Is that one?
Monster Zero.
Maybe.
Yeah, that was actually King Ghidorah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
there were a few different movies where he fights King Ghidorah. But you saw the movies from the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah. And then of course I saw the is it 99?
98.
98. I saw that one in theaters, and I thought it was pretty dang cool.
Yeah, the American 1998 Godzilla.
Right. Yeah, I was also 10 years old, so
Yeah.
it was really easy to impress me at that point. But even then, I think for the time, it was like I don't know. I remember.
It was a big hit actually because of the marketing.
Right. But I also remember being like a point, like Godzilla in New York City was like New York City, you know? So.
は送信されてないんですけど、注文しなくて大丈
Oh,
夫
you
です
didn't press green.
Oh, sorry. One sec. See what I said? Well, then it just pops up again. Oh, I thought we did. Well, we've got either a computer malfunction or we are already drunk. I don't think so.
No.
We just got
We
here.
just got here. This is ridiculous.
So
I don't want to put him on there now. So
right.
the waitress gave me a weird look as I pulled away
yeah,
Godzilla.
it's all right. I don't think it's fine.
No shame. All right, so
We're not gonna
anyways,
say shit. They don't get paid enough to say shit here.
I'm not editing any of this. Holy shit! This is just one run. Okay,
Right.
so but yeah, so that besides that, and then what you
Yeah. So
you put me through.
when the first time you came to my house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the first time you ever visited my house, we both live here in Tachikawa.
Yeah.
And I collect Godzilla stuff, and when he told me he was coming over, I knew he wanted to play some video games. That was fine, but I had like a list of movies that I wanted to show him that I knew that would blow his mind. And the first, like, I think the very first movie I showed you.
Wasn't like Gamera stuff.
Well, I showed you a couple clips of Gamera,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we skipped through a couple parts of this movie, but we watched most of the.
Yeah, I saw the
most of
important
movies.
parts.
Yeah. A lot of political dialogue, but yeah. I gave him the premise, and then he watched all the crazy shit. But yeah, I showed him Shin Godzilla, which was released in 2016.
Yeah.
It was the first Godzilla movie I'd seen in Japanese theaters. And when I saw it, I took my kids to it. I even wrote this giant review and blog post about it and made my kids cry.
I'll link it somewhere.
Yeah, it made the picture of my son crying after the movie is in my blog post. And they were scared to death of that movie.
How old was he when he saw it?
He was almost 5. He was
Oh
4.
my God.
But he was obsessed with Godzilla, so like I couldn't not take him. This was like it would be his like first and maybe only experience to see one because we didn't know if they were gonna make any more.
That's fair.
And yeah, he was too young to see the American reboot of Godzilla in 2014 because he was like 2.
With everyone's favorite Japanese ambassador, Ken Watanabe.
Yeah, but that wasn't a Japanese movie.
I know, but I like
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, it was fine. It was alright movie. It was an alright movie. Anyway, we're not talking about that movie.
I didn't see it. I don't know.
So he had no idea what this was about or
Nope.
anything. I just told him it was a new Godzilla movie. I think I did tell you that it was by the director of Evangelion,
Which I haven't
but
seen.
you haven't seen it. So
Me neither.
that helps if you have seen it. That helps you to kind of maybe know what to expect to some degree because he has a lot of tropes that are in all of his, not all, but almost all of his features.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that helps I think in the shock value. But it was pure shock value, I think, for you.
Dude, yeah, it stressed me out. Like, it honestly stressed me out because I saw, like, so I've been in Japan, this is my 3rd consecutive year now, but I was here for a year before, and I don't know, I think there's something, well, I mean, there's a big part of it's just, it's a lot of destruction. It's a lot of destruction. And I came after the big earthquake and tsunami in 2011, so I didn't experience any of that. But where I'm from, we don't have earthquakes. We only have hurricanes, and hurricanes are, thankfully, very predictable. We know where they're going, we know when they're gonna arrive, and you can prepare to a certain amount. But earthquakes, you can't, and that is always and maybe will forever freak me out. Like all the alarms go off when there's a little like da 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 da. I'm like like. You know, I'm ready to run out of the house.
Noob.
Yeah, well, fine, whatever. But there's no warning for that stuff, and luckily now I live on the 1st floor of my apartment. When I lived out in Gunma, I lived on the 4th floor, and if the earth sneezed, it was like I would get thrown out of my bed, and like I look down and no one's outside. Everyone's like, back to sleep or whatever. But yeah, and just kind of like seeing. I mean, I have a hard time even watching it now, but like seeing any like footage of what happened back then, 2011, and just like kind of getting a grip on the culture when you think about like the fact this is like the earthquake country, where it's like
right. And then I have noticed, like you mentioned 2011, I've heard some people be like, what happened in 2011? Like a lot of people, especially younger people, don't know. So you have to directly say Fukushima disaster.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't just Fukushima.
No, I mean I don't even. That's the thing. Like when I think about it, I don't even think about the radioactive part of it.
Yeah.
My immediate thing is like the wave,
the tsunamis.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like some of the footage is terrifying, and watching that fucking movie, I was like, oh god, like
yeah.
And then seeing places that I've been to that I really like when this form, what's the name of this form?
Oh yeah, we'll go back to that.
But when he shows up,
so basically the movie itself is a direct callback to the 2011 Fukushima and nuclear disaster and the tsunamis, everything that happened in that day, and so it was made 5 years after all that happened, after things had kind of settled down. And right now it's not much in the public conscious in Japan. It's like it's still an ongoing thing. There's still like radiation, and they're moving people back in. Some of those places, some places are going to be never used for hundreds or more years. And some people are still in temporary housing, living together like in shelters.
That's fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah, it's some deep stuff. But I thought that this movie was a great reminder of that, and I actually was back in the U.S. when it happened, and I was about to move back. I was about to move back that week, and my aunt was visiting us from my aunt-in-law, my wife's aunt, was visiting us and staying at our apartment in Kentucky, and then she was supposed to fly out, and she was helping us move things, and that morning I woke up to take her to the airport, and like there was no going back to Japan for a while. So like we were just glued to the news and horrified, and then I could kind of tell that they might have been thinking about steering it in that direction for this movie, because the original Godzilla was based off the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, so like they had to put a new take on it. And yeah, this is the first movie in Japan that's completely reinvented the Godzilla canon and reinvented the character itself.
So since it's all been like
after the first Godzilla, every other Godzilla movie is a sequel to the original Godzilla. To a degree, except when you get to like the 60s and 70s, like they kind of just throw it away and he becomes a good guy. And
what about Space Godzilla? What's up with that?
So that's all in the Heisei period. Okay. All the Heisei movies, that's from 1984 until 1995. All of those are direct sequels to the original Godzilla movie. And there's nothing between, like all the movies from the 60s and 70s don't exist at that point. And then all the movies made after 1998 were basically just like each their own sequels to the original Godzilla. But they all fall back on that original movie. Shin Godzilla is the first Japanese movie that wipes the slate clean and then reinvents him from the beginning to his origin. So they go into his origin. His origin, it goes into not the Fukushima disaster, but basically Japan dumping nuclear radiation into the ocean, which is essentially what they were actually doing. But they don't mention Fukushima at all.
This is an indirect culture. We don't talk it straight here.
Well, that was still a big move, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's really bold to begin with.
Here, that was definitely a big move.
I mean, honestly, if I ever talk about, which I rarely do, but if I'm ever in a conversation with Japanese people about like 3/11 disaster, like you see it in their face. Like it's a real stressful, like it wasn't easy for anybody. I mean, even as far as Gunma, I mean, which is far from it, like basically in the mountains. If you talk about it with people there, they'll tell you like, oh yeah, we would feel the aftershocks for weeks after the fact. Like, It's crazy.
It sounds horrifying.
I can't.
I'm glad I wasn't here at the time, but I'm glad that I'm able to. We were both able to like see it happen on national television
Yeah.
and reflect, especially after moving here.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, it was also a big. It's always a factor in when I did come back, like where I was looking for work and stuff. Like,
yeah. There's still nuclear power plants all over the place here. Oh.
失礼いたします。
You really ordered one?
All right, and let's
You
change the
ordered
topic
one.
now.
What a-
What
a jerk.
we got it's basically ground chicken meat.
Take it to the camera.
Ground chicken meat. I'm trying not to dump it into the camera
Yeah, okay.
or into the microphone. With surrounded by peppers, and it's got some nice juicy sauce and
It's
some
a great
spicy
serving for one.
spicy mustard.
God damn it.
No, we're gonna share it like Lady and the Tramp. And that way, if we bite into one, we'll both kiss each other.
Anyways,
Have some chopsticks. At least eat one.
I'll eat one. Real quick. Yeah. So
So yeah, that was a nice little icebreaker there, and so let's get into why this movie is cool. That's the name of the video. Yeah.
Why is it cool?
So I would like you to explain the first appearance of Godzilla in his first form. Okay. Oh wait, it's a pretense set. So he first appears as just like a tail in the water. You don't see him much. When he surfaces and you can see his full body, what was your reaction?
Well, not even then. Isn't it just like a basically like boiling the water? There you go. There's
All right,
enough for 2
and then
humans.
we've got some
Cheeseburgers.
Yeah, it's basically chicken cheeseburgers on sticks.
Yeah, so it's like boiling blood, basically, right? Like coming out of the water, and they think it's like a gas leak or something.
Yeah, and then you see a tail pop up, and
Right.
then like one guy's
It's
like,
just-
"It must be a giant creature," and the other people are like, "No, we can't back that up."
Yeah.
And the videos that people have shown on YouTube and things are probably fake.
Yeah, I mean,
But when he makes,
landfall. Like,
well, he's still in the water
right, but
technically.
he's running through the rivers.
He's running through rivers.
Oh,
Okay,
jeez.
so immediately, what did you think of like when you saw that? What did that
is-
remind you
that
of?
is clearly
Yeah.
like tsunami. I mean,
Yeah.
he's basically a physical wave pushing through. There's boats just stacking up, running
Yeah.
through the streets,
And cars.
and people are like freaking the hell out. I mean,
And you know, you've seen, as you said, you've seen like the old '70s movies when you were a kid.
yeah.
And you saw like the 1998 Roland Emmerich version,
Yeah.
but like
The
you know,
earthworms, man, the earthworms. The guy who studies worms, he can help us.
the first Godzilla movie was pretty dark, but you know, for its time, there was only so much they could do with special effects. But like seeing them recreate a tsunami with a giant creature, and in Japan, Japan's special effects are usually terrible in movies, and they did a really good job making this giant, like shark turkey looking, god awful googly eyed fucking creature, like creepy as hell.
Does the tail have a form name or?
Well, wait, the tail's later.
No, I mean the first.
Oh yes, it's Form 1.
Yeah, but does it have a name like the other ones do?
No, I don't think so. I think it's called Form 1. They make toys of Form 1. It's just a tail and like water. They have, even if you get the art book, they have like design concepts, but they don't actually have a drawing of the first one.
Okay.
So it's left a mystery.
Right.
But you can kind of guess what it probably
Right,
would look
right.
like.
Yeah, so it's basically like a shark fin, right? It's just a giant warning of what's to come. Jesus Christ. I stress me out.
Yeah.
Stress me out.
So obviously you're going to insert cuts of what he looks like.
Yeah. You'll see.
I'm sure if you clicked on this video, you probably had seen the movie, most likely, and
Yeah. If you haven't, I really think everyone should watch it. It's not a bad movie at all. It's really good. But for me personally, I mean, I sat through it. I never said turn it off. I just kept going like, ouch.
why are you showing me this?
Stop. And
I'm terrified.
pretty sure we were drinking.
Not heavily. We were.
I'm weak. I'm pretty sure
This
we
is
were.
early in the night.
What else did we watch after that?
A bunch of crazy YouTube stuff.
Oh, you made me watch Trailer Park Boys. Was that the time? No, that was after Brazil.
Yeah, that was after Brazil. That'd be another day.
That's another day.
All right,
Anyways,
so he crashes through. He's basically going in the Kamata River channel in the Kamata ward. I don't know if that's that's what the river's name. Anyway, so the tsunami scene thing happens, and then he gets out. He gets out onto the street, and he starts vibrating, and his gills start gushing like molten blood.
Ugh.
And then he kind of stands erect, and then he forms two little arms which he didn't have before, and he kind of gets more reddish, and he grows in size, and then he starts walking on two legs. And at this point, the Japanese government has gone through chains of command and enough confirmation that they're going to try to attack him, but they have to wait for the prime minister to give his order to attack them, and then of course they didn't expect it to make landfall. So the city's not evacuated yet, and they've got aerial attack ships just ready to just open fire on it. So what happens? What happens after that point? Because they don't open fire. They don't fire
because there's an old lady.
Yeah,
Like being carried across train tracks.
Well,
Like ah.
right. Prior to that, like when he's like mid-transformation, or right before he transforms, they have a big reason, not just because of the devastation on the street. He's basically jumping up and knocking, like with his...
Yeah, he knocks over a building.
Knocking over a building, and they show an entire family fall to their death, crushed by their apartment.
I think that's the part that really, like, at first, like, oh, look at all this destruction. Like, that's fucked up. But when I saw, like, a family, like, there's a shot of a family, and they're, like, getting ready to get the hell out of here, and they're putting a helmet on their kid. They're like, hey, man, we gotta get the hell out of here. And then suddenly the whole apartment just starts turning because he's just running up it. And there's something, especially about, I'm serious about this. He's got soulless eyes. Like, there's something about, it's just a force of nature that seems to be completely unstoppable. And there's nothing anyone can do about it.
I actually, I actually have read parts of the Art of Shin Godzilla, and they haven't published it in English yet, but basically they gave him like fish eyes. Like they're kind of like foggy. They don't have any eyelids. They never close or anything. But like if you think of past Godzillas, they've always got kind of a determined expression, or kind of like a scowl, or a cute like kind of look to it. In this movie, they're just like dead fish eyes, like somewhere between shark eyes and then just like some other kind of fish that's got more defined pupils.
Yeah, even considering the
They're
way
very
the teeth are made for the final form, and those eyes, it's totally shark. Like, it's just killing machine, but you can't reason with it. There's nothing there for you. It's just, it doesn't give a shit. It's gonna do what it's gonna do, and it literally, it's carving a hole, just a straight line right through the city, and then like, so I've read a good amount about like Japanese history and stuff, and like a big thing in Japan for a long time was fires, and like how do they deal with fires, especially when you're so condensed, and when you're prior to basically pre-war Japan, and by war we always mean the Second World War in Japan, everything was wooden, so fires were a serious problem, to the point where they had to like start basically like city planning was based around fire safety. Like we need breaks so that if there's a fire, not everybody dies at once. Like,
They still have, even to this day, in the wintertime, people walk around with
blocks.
Yeah, these like wooden blocks. That makes that, that if you think of like Japanese like ding, like wooden block sounds hitting together.
Yeah.
And then they are calling out. It's usually It's usually a rotational thing with like people that live in a certain block, and they're making sure everyone turns around between 8-9 o'clock, making sure everyone turns off like their heating and stuff.
Yeah.
But they still happen.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff is still made out of wood here.
Right. And like I said, just so packed. Everything's so packed together. And any of those enemies. And I think a lot of that has to do with, like when people ask me, like, oh, like, are there a lot of mountains in Japan? I always tell them, like, no. Japan is mountains.
Yeah.
Tokyo's the only spot where you'll find where it's not really that much, but then again, I just took a train for like half an hour.
Yeah.
I just went to a nearby mountain.
It's like somewhere between like 70 and 80% mountains.
Yeah. So when you think about like, and they're not just mountains. Like most mountains are considered to be like holy places or religious areas. So it's not like anybody could just. You're not gonna find like duplexes on the side of the mountain. That's not common at all. So it's the history of Japan is being in tight quarters for the most part, making use of space efficiently and whatnot. But then at the same time, the history of Japan is dealing with the idea of earthquakes and tsunamis on a regular basis historically. And I mean, what a metaphor! I mean. The thing, it runs up a building, knocks it over, murders everyone, and doesn't stop.
Yep.
I mean, you see children die, it's rough.
Yep.
It's rough.
I think it's the first Godzilla movie that shows a child actually die. In the original Godzilla, they show scenes of children weeping, like in basically evacuation shelters for people who are like holding these children. They're screaming for their mothers. Like if you watch the original Godzilla, that shit will give you chills.
I don't know if I've ever sat through it.
But yeah, there's definitely it's definitely got the same feeling as Shin Godzilla, and the thing about Shin Godzilla is though they don't really focus on the people surrounding what's happening to them. They focus solely on the government and their response.
Yeah.
And how they're going to deal with it. And another big part of that movie is the Japanese government's inept actions and delayed actions, and how much bureaucracy is involved to act on a disaster or any situation.
Yeah, it brings a lot of questions. I think it brings a lot of cultural questions. Like I said earlier, this is a very indirect culture. You don't really say things straight on. The idea of dependency on the U.S. military, and there's a lot of that. Like they have to ask for permission. The U.S. military is setting timetables for them. That's a big deal.
That comes up a lot in that movie.
Yeah, and it's just disaster. Not even. I think definitely disaster response, but I think it's just response to anything critical.
Right.
It brings a real highlight to
Right.
Are we ready for things or not? Because 311, it shows not so much. And not to say that they haven't made in Japan there haven't been large changes because of it. I mean, huge, sweeping changes. And that's one of the strengths of the country as a whole. Is that culturally, people can get on board to things I think a little easier, all together than they could back home, right? Energy usage is a big deal here, especially since then because of they don't want to be nuclear dependent. They kind of this is maybe one of the worst things that's happened to us in recent memory. We shouldn't have this anymore, and everybody got on board. I can't imagine anything like that happening back home without people I
used to see marches and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
When that was coming up. I don't see it so much anymore.
Not so often, yeah.
But yeah, they used to have rolling blackouts and stuff right after 311 here, and everyone just accepted it. I mean, it was probably hard for everyone.
I mean, not to get political, but when people ask me here, after every mass shooting back home, or when kids are killed, and they're like, "Why does this keep happening?" I'm like, because we're argumentative people, and we don't believe in the common good. I guess I don't know. We can't come together all the time. It's a little harder.
There's a lot of crazy people here too.
No, for
there's
sure.
A lot of crazy stuff that happens here, and it's all a very close society. On an island,
right?
In very dense populated areas. So when it does happen, it happens pretty crazy.
Oh, there was that murder. About the guy who killed 7 people or something. He had body parts in his
When
fridge.
was this?
It was last year.
Last year?
Nearby, not too far from here.
The biggest thing I remember was in Akihabara, 2009. A guy I don't know if it was his truck or he stole a truck and he
ran over people?
He ran it into Akihabara when they had the streets closed off.
Yeah.
And just ran over a ton of people and got out and started stabbing people with a Dragon Quest sword that he bought. Yeah. And I used to do rehearsal there every weekend when I lived here, and this was just a year or two after I moved back, and I was I probably would have been there or around the area when it happened, and that was insane. But there's a lot of mass stabbings here if you go back through history. It's not like It's not the same, and it doesn't happen like it's not like there's a lot. It just when it happens.
When it happens, it matters here. Like,
Yeah.
you notice it. That's big news.
Yeah. All right. Well, back to Godzilla.
Back to Godzilla. Why is it cool?
Well, no. First of all, we were talking about the ineptitude of Japanese government, but also the perseverance of the people here and their mindset. So after he wrecks and kills a bunch of people, and they don't fire upon him because there's some elderly people crossing the street, and the prime minister says, no, there's civilians in the area, we can't open fire on civilians, which actually at this point he's just standing still. Maybe if he was just going crazy, I would have been like, okay, just do it, because he's wrecking everything. But he's just standing there looking at the helicopters and jets with their guns pointed at him. They probably could have done him in at that point.
But they never fire.
No, well, he doesn't give them permission. And as soon as he looks at them and they don't fire, he just
turned around and
then just dives right back into the ocean. And if you watch the cutscenes, I will send you the link to that. Put that in for this.
Putting it in.
Okay. Right before that happens, when he's in the second form, he rears up and down to do his atomic breath. And just molten lava, instead of coming out of his gills, molten blood actually comes out of his mouth
gross.
and fills the streets. And they actually filmed practical effects of tires melting on cars and the streets sinking down and boiling. And then he runs into the ocean. And it basically was because at this point he was overheating.
Right.
Because he's got an atomic center. So he dives back into the ocean. He leaves an atomic trail and all this destruction. The government has time to think about what they're going to do if he resurfaces. They put a big plan together to fight him with the help of the United States government, and they're basically just going to use bigger artillery and make sure the area is evacuated adequately. It does not work. And where does Godzilla, once he's in this final form,
He shows up at one of my favorite places. He goes to Enoshima. It's fucked up. It's fucked up because it's a cool, weird beach that's full of Seahawks. There's no seagulls. There's only giant birds with giant talons, and they just hover over you. You're like, are they gonna murder me? And the answer is definitely maybe. And there's also crows, and crows are really assholes here. Crows are the size of, medium-sized dogs here. So. And there's an island where there's a dragon, so I guess that's somewhat whatever.
It's beautiful. This island, it's like this little island next to this giant long beach, and there's Mount Fuji in the background.
You can see, if it's a clear day, you can see Mount Fuji like nobody's business, and it's awesome, and you got the ocean, and it's great. And he showed up, and he just wrecked it.
In the middle of the day.
Like it's all good. No warning, he just walks around, and people are like, what is this?
Disappears. And at this point, he is...
ruins it.
I don't know, I don't remember the exact scale, but he's...
Who cares?
He's double or
Huge.
triple his original size, and he's at that point, he was...
Skyscraper size.
He was the biggest Godzilla in history.
Back then, now they just keep elevating.
Well, they made the
right?
anime Godzilla. He's bigger than the American Godzilla. The new one. No, the new one.
Oh.
The 98 Godzilla is really small. Tiny little penis. This was the tallest Godzilla after the 2014 movies. Slightly.
Could we say extra penis?
Extra penis.
Call
Thanks,
back.
son. But then they made the animated Godzilla movie series. They made 3 of them, and if you're in the U.S., you can watch them on Netflix. The first one's They used some stupid 3D rendered cell animation style, and it just looks like garbage. The second movie was a gore fest. The third movie just came out. Anyway, they're all garbage as far as I'm concerned. They try to make a boring Star Trek episode out of Godzilla. And I love Star Trek. They try to make a boring episode of Star Trek out of Godzilla. It's that place in the future, where humans are friends with aliens, and anyway, it was terrible.
That sounds bad.
No. Anyway, yeah, it's terrible. Anyway, he was massive. When they show him, you get this when he walks onto land, you get the scale, and basically a lot of the scenes only show his tail, just kind of waving above the city. Usually his tail just kind of drags behind him in most of the movies, but in this movie it's just its own animal, and I think there's a purpose for that. But we'll get into that in a second. So he makes landfall middle of the day, and this time the government's kind of know that he's going to come back. They don't realize he's going to be that fucking huge. But this time they've got the help of the United States government, and in the Air Force.
Right.
Which, there's a lot of Air Force bases here. We live pretty close to one. You can see
Really
a lot
close.
of you can see a lot of helicopters. And,
Yeah, today I saw a few.
and,
I was
jets
actually
flying
concerned.
over.
I was like, it's windy. I'm like, should I be flying? Yeah, okay. Like,
So, basically in that scene, they don't want Godzilla to. So that area where he mentioned that he's coming from, he's basically in Kanagawa Prefecture, and they don't want him to cross the Tama River, which we're near the Tama River, but it's a long
I live
river.
right behind it.
They don't want him to cross that river into Tokyo. So they try to hold him at the river with tanks and helicopters, and they think they've got him, and he just like throws a bridge at them. He literally like just hits a bridge with like his tail and throws this massive bridge onto all the tanks and crushes like half of the Japan Defense Force. And
You should probably mention what that is, because people might not know the difference.
In Japan, currently, Abe, the prime minister, is pushing for it, and they've made some leniencies on it. But Japan is not allowed to have an offensive force, so they have
by their constitution,
yeah,
after World War II.
So they have the Japanese Defense Force. They're only allowed to protect Japan, and they do some humanitarian stuff outside of Japan. But when it comes to artillery and things being used,
they won't fire a shot.
Yeah, only unless a giant monster is attacking. The prime minister says it's okay.
If he's fine.
Yeah, but in this movie, Abe is not the prime minister.
No, he is not.
Yeah, and he's actually kind of the opposite in some ways. And in some ways he is, because like they're playing on his lack of his inability to react or to tell the truth regarding the disaster in Fukushima. But in the movie, he's more portrayed as just ignorant, because he's like. There's several times where they just catch him in the act of like saying something that he believes, given his sources, but then he's immediately contradicted, like while he's on live television, and then so it becomes a thing. So Godzilla eventually crosses the river, crosses the Tama River, makes it into Tokyo, and at this point it's like sunset, and you can see like the glow of his body. That's yours. Yeah.
Food.
You can see the glow of his body, and it just looks amazing. He's just kind of walking through Tokyo, and you see like little explosions. It looks epic. Some of the best shots I've ever seen in any giant monster movie. And
really amazing cinematography.
So at this point, they're trying to evacuate Tokyo government, and they're sending the prime minister, everyone off in helicopters and cars. And then you see him not off far in the distance, from the perspective of one of the main characters, Rando Yaguchi, who is kind of your main character, but is not, I guess, the main character, because they kind of fluctuate between a bunch of different people. But I guess he'd be the closest you could call a main character. And he's the one that comes up with the plan to stop Godzilla eventually. But in that scene, the prime minister is taking off in a helicopter, and that's around the time that Godzilla is being, right after he's been attacked by American bombers. The bombers drop bombs on his spines, on his dorsal plates, and they actually break one off.
Bad boys right here.
They break one of his dorsal plates off, and all this blood falls to the ground, and he just gets pissed off. And then you're like, oh shit, he's gonna do his atomic breath. And then if you're familiar with the classic Godzilla, he would just kind of just shoot it. He would, like, his back would glow blue, and he would shoot bluish white things. But in this movie, he starts to glow, and then he starts to turn like violet.
Yeah.
And then he leans down, blows out just a pillar of smoke,
Yo,
followed by
so
fire.
good, dude. It was so good.
Explosive fire fills up all of central Tokyo with fire.
What a
and
scene.
And then you just see just shit just exploding
A lot of it
everywhere.
has to do with the angle. So like
Yeah.
you're always looking at it almost like it's almost isometric the way you're looking at it. You can see the grid, the weird grid of like Tokyo, and you just see smoke just flowing through. You're like, Jesus, like if you've been here and you know what one block is, and to imagine smoke flying through that stuff at that
speed, and then when the fire starts to follow the smoke, like fire, like not the flame, like not the radioactive flame, just fire. And then the sound that they use for that sounds like it's basically a lot of the effects they use for the movie, even including like Godzilla's like stomp, the music, his breath attacks, were all used from various Godzilla movies throughout Godzilla's history. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, you were telling me that.
But I love all the classic sounds they use. They're not using that kind of. They're not using modern like.
It's not the Reapers all the time. He doesn't like video games.
I don't dislike them.
I know, but you don't play them.
I don't play new video games.
The Reapers are basically that noise comes from the Reapers. They're just intergalactic robot squids.
Well, that all goes back to
Inception
and
and stuff like
stuff.
that,
Yeah, but they use it for every trailer now. And I just want to puke.
So annoying.
Anyway,
So annoying.
so he does that. Everything, you just see
that's-
shit exploding everywhere, glass flying up, and then it turns into a fine focus ultraviolet beam.
But isn't it like red fire and then blue fire and then it starts to like?
Well, maybe
For like a second.
maybe for a split second, but it basically goes from the fire kind of into a more reddish,
Like
bluish
as it
color.
concentrates.
Yeah, then it concentrates, and
Yeah.
it goes like it's like you can see like a kind of a triangle, then it comes out.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like there's like a focus point.
It looks like a torch. That's not the word.
It looks
torch?
like
Is that
a,
correct?
I don't know, it looks like just a really hardcore butane lighter, like.
No,
on
but
the-
you know when you know when people are like welding and shit.
Yeah.
Like it, you start off kind of wide, and you kind of bring it together.
Yeah, it's like
Talk about his face.
It's like something like that in between his and a laser. Oh yeah,
Face is the most important part.
That's something that blew
God.
my mind.
Jesus
And
Christ.
This was very unexpected. They never
Ugh.
teased this in the trailers or anything. When he goes for the breath, he doesn't just shoot the breath. His lower jaw splits off into
Splits
mandibles,
open.
and it is creepy as hell.
It is the creepiest shit. And then he's got that beam. Just
Yeah.
a beam. And
the-
like, it just cuts.
The beam also has a great sound effect. I think it's the same sound effect they use in Evangelion. Because there's a lot of like purple and blue beams in Evangelion that just cut shit in half. Like you could tell immediately, it's like, all right, we know who directed this. And he just cuts shit in half. He just starts cutting buildings in half. You see the Prime Minister take off in his helicopter. Prime Minister is dead. And then basically, all of the base of the government's offensive operation, moves here to Tachikawa.
That's when I really started having anxiety. I'm like, if this
Yeah.
motherfucker shows up and wrecks my school, wrecks my house, wrecks my station, I'm like, that's my whole life right now. I don't want to see kids dying. I know these kids. It ain't right, man. I can't. Yeah, it doesn't matter, man. It's a metaphor. I don't like metaphors.
Okay.
Get close to home because I'm soft.
While they're all on their way to Tachikawa, he basically burns himself out. And you see like all of his glowing lights shut down, his beam disappears, and then he takes a few steps, and then he just kind of goes...
Jeremy, you're ruining the movie for everybody.
Well, that's what
We've
we're
been talking for 40 minutes. We haven't said why it's cool.
Well, we have to talk about all this stuff before we talk about school. We just talked about how cool that shit was.
That was pretty cool. Okay, the point is...
You can make some jump cuts.
I just feel like it's 42 minutes on the clock, man.
You can make jump cuts.
I don't want to cut. I'm tired of cutting. I've
We're
been
at the-
cutting for weeks.
Just cut. No edits, just cut.
No, I'm literally like,
Oh yeah, you have to edit. You have to edit some of those scenes in.
I'm not putting them in. I'm not even changing the audio time, nothing.
You're not gonna put the scenes in?
I am, but I'm not gonna change. Like, you're gonna talk right over the scene. Like,
Oh, okay.
this is like
That's what I
inside
mean.
baseball right here.
I would watch 45 minutes of this.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, let's not.
That's why we're talking
let's
about.
not.
Don't
Let's
spoil the
not
whole
even
thing.
end.
Don't
That's-
give
okay,
me
that's
the
not
end.
the end. That's not
But
the
why
end.
is this so cool? Like, we've talked about why it's a big metaphor.
One of the coolest parts of the end is one of the reasons why I think it's so cool.
Okay, go, no, do it. We're here.
Okay, fast forward. Godzilla wakes up and they have a plan to freeze him
Is it
internally.
the trains? The train thing?
Oh, that's one. That's like
super
it's
cool.
It's basically just domino effect of amazing stuff.
Fair enough.
So he wakes up because he's cool. He had to cool himself off. So he kind of goes to sleep, and while he's asleep, they come up with a plan to basically freeze him from the inside using a blood coagulant that will calm him down. It won't kill him. It'll just put him out of action for an indeterminate amount of time, but probably a while until they can figure out how to dispose of him. And so their plan is to, which they do all of this, take all of the main Japanese Tokyo's train lines,
So cool.
pack them full of bombs, because he's like kind of he's huge, he's like standing around like several of the lines, and they just throw them all at him.
Is he standing over like a certain station?
He's around Tokyo Station
Tokyo
at that point,
Station?
yeah. And they're all those trains run through that area, and then he's bombarded by 2 waves of these trains. And when they crash into them, they use the old school like explosion sound effects, and the trains hit each other, and they just like start folding up and flying up in the air. And
It looks really cool.
And he's just like, oh, fuck. And then,
Some of the practical effects in that movie are
oh
like
yeah, some of them are really good.
fucking fantastic.
Yeah, I've got to link you to the making of stuff. Yeah.
It's already here. It's magic.
Yeah.
We already did.
I own the 3-disc Blu-ray that has way more than the YouTube version, but
This guy right here. This guy right here.
Yeah.
Look, he's got it all. He's got all the fucking YouTube.
I also have the US cut with the English dub.
All right. Fucking relax.
All right. So after they blow up his legs, he kind of moves from that area, and then they start shooting missiles from helicopters and airplanes into buildings, combined with the demolition explosions, thermite charges.
Don't start.
The buildings topple over because they're shooting them and blowing them up. The buildings fall over like this because when you use thermite, they fall down. Anyway,
one more beer. I need another beer.
That's how it works. I'll do it. That's why they use thermite to demolish buildings. The buildings fall on top of him, and they have these really amazing looking shots of him falling over and being crushed by buildings.
One more?
Yes. I can kill us before it comes. I only have that much left. And they get him on the ground, which was the whole reason for using the foot explosions to weaken his feet, and then knocking him over with buildings. And then they used probably the hokiest CG in the whole movie. They could have filmed it practically, of all these trucks coming up with hoses, and it looked kind of weird. It's probably towards the end of production. They could have just used real trucks, and then they could have used CG for some of the elements. But they have these trucks with tanks, and they stick the tanks into these big hoses into his mouth, and they just start injecting the coagulant. Yeah, but basically everything that happened between those points. Everything that happens between those points, don't stack it. I want to use one with those. Is pure amazingness. And the scene also at dark in the night when he's attacking Tokyo and does the fire breath. Okay, but while they're sorry, I missed the point. After they blow up his legs and shit, and he suddenly has a new thing that he uses. He actually uses a new thing in the other scene too. His spines shoot out lasers, and he does a rave thing. But that was kind of okay, well his spines glow all the time, that makes sense. But then something happens in this scene. His tail, you see a light fall of the end of his tail, and it kind of falls all the way to the end, and then you see his tail at the end shoots out a laser beam, and it starts going swinging around like this, and just shooting down all of the airplanes and all the helicopters that are firing at the building and firing on him, and it's just wicked. It did not expect it to happen. I thought it was so fucking cool in the movie theater. I was just oh my god, this is cool! I can't wait to go home and write a fucking review about this movie.
And make my kids cry.
Well, I didn't care about that anymore.
That's on film, man.
My kids love it now. They're not even that much older, but they love it now that they've seen it. I think it's just in the theater, it kind of scared them in the dark room with a giant monitor.
I can't imagine watching that with the sound on,
Yeah.
It's too much. It's too much.
I feel the ending slightly anticlimactic, but I think the fact that because he kind of stands up and then he freezes.
Yeah. It's pretty quick.
Yeah, and you're okay, what's going to happen next? And they're not going to make a sequel as far as they've mentioned. How do you feel about this? All right, I lied. I didn't finish this one, and I have another one. But yeah, and then could you please explain the very final scene of the movie, which was also made it really fucking cool because
so
we say final form, but it wasn't really his final form.
All right, drink. So at the end, he's got a weird tail. It's a little gross, right? And I saw some articles saying that it looked like he had whale skeletons around his tail, because there's a bit of
He's got a bunch of bones and shit.
Yeah. But basically, at the end, they zoom in, they take a nice, good shot of his tail, and there's human skeletons coming out of it, and it seems like he's the next level. Because the idea, I think, was basically he's supposed to be evolution incarnate.
Yeah.
Every time he's
human skeletons with Godzilla's spines.
Right. So every time he's addressed with some kind of a obstacle, he will evolve to change in accordance to whatever the obstacle is, and essentially it's evolution on a time. It's gross. It's
you can
disgusting.
kind of see the face there.
Come on.
Sorry, I didn't know you wanted so much food.
It's so embarrassing.
You ordered way too much food.
I
And
did
she
not.
Said, and she said, "You guys."
She said, "You guys are fucking weird.
fucking
Japanese."
nerds.
We're translating. She's like, "Get that toy out of here. We're trying to work." How old are you?
She probably thinks we're tourists.
For sure. Everybody thinks I'm a tourist.
Waving around Godzilla toys.
Anyways, the point is,
All right.
she's probably like, "Why is there a microphone in the ashtray?"
That's right. Microphones in the ashtray.
The point is that there's like human skeletons coming out because I think from what I've read and what I've seen, people have said that like he was taken down by a committee, so he's trying. So his response is to make his own committee. Like there's a unification of forces against him, so he'll make his own forces to combat that.
Right.
Freaking dope. But I'm glad they never acted on it. I'm glad it's never seen fruition.
It's better to leave it.
Not.
Better to leave it open.
It should just be done
use
that
your
way.
Imagination.
Because at the end, I think if they did, it would undermine the original analogy of like, get your shit together.
Right.
Stop fucking around. Bad shit's gonna happen no matter what. We need to have clearer lines to decision making and a faster response to everything.
Yeah.
And
So
even
same thing
question
with the original
dependency.
Godzilla was like that.
Even question dependency on the U.S. Fair enough.
Yeah, if you ever see the direct sequel to the original Godzilla,
not.
they just paired him up against a giant like Ankylosaurus with like some different facial features. It's a famous kaiju now, Anguirus, but the movie's fucking terrible. It's terrible. Like that's the Toho is actually going to make a completely new MonsterVerse, and Shin Godzilla could be in it. But I don't think they would change it. I think they would just retroactively
Take away the tail stuff.
Yeah, say that like when they froze him, like it killed his ability to evolve, and then maybe pit him against someone. Or they're probably just going to put out another bunch of other Godzilla movies, Godzilla designs. But anyway, I love a lot of the Godzilla designs in the past, but bar none, Shin Godzilla is my favorite and the most unique for sure. And I thought he was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in a cinema here.
Yeah, I won't lie, like, it's so menacing in a way, like, just, you know, like, it's really popular now, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
Apocalypse narratives are all the rage for a few years now, right? And everyone's, you know, it's either a zombie thing or whatever, but I feel like this embodiment of just like an unstoppable force that people have to really get together and fucking like just deal with it head on, not dick around. Like this is what it is, and we need to do something about it. I think it really hits home specifically here. But look at his face. He doesn't give a shit. He's like it's just.
If I didn't think it was cool as fuck, I wouldn't have shown it to you like right after the first thing. Like that was my first like movie I wanted to show you for some reason, and I had Brazil to show you too, and I was just like,
that's another video. I
don't
even know.
I don't even know. Fucked up videos.
See, I don't even know. But I'll say this: like, if you haven't seen it, and we totally ruined it for you, you should watch it anyways. The visuals are on point, as you've probably seen already, and it's a really good critique on the status of the country, I think, where they stand in accordance to not just disaster stuff, but culturally, like it really brings a lot of stuff into question. Definitely check it out.
Yes.
You should also check out the Tokyo Toy Bastard review of some like that bootleg.
Oh yeah,
that was my favorite video you've ever made.
My bootleg Shin Godzilla video.
Yeah.
I did a review of a Chinese bootleg of this figure, and I also did a review of some Japanese independent soft vinyl figures that are some of the most expensive Shin Godzilla figures ever made.
Yeah,
so I got lucky enough to grab some of them.
I'll definitely link all that below. Check out his channel. He does a lot of cool shit. We're almost running into an hour here.
Yep.
Way longer than we planned to.
Yep.
So I think it's a good time to end it. Check out the fucking movie, read about history, learn shit, and put film into context, people. Good film critiques life, man.
Godzilla's butt.
Thing out of my face.
He doesn't poop.
He gave me this is a gift from him, and it started 2 shelves now. I
Yeah.
have 2 shelves
Sorry.
full of shit.
Sorry.
And I don't even know where to put that giant Krillin. He gave me. I'm gonna put a photo right now of this giant Krillin he gave me as I try to escape his house. As he continues to just throw gifts at me. Stop it! I have nothing to offer. Except beer.
Yes, you do.
There you go. All right. Cheers. I'm broke. This is I'm Oliver. All imported. Who are you?
Tokyo Toy Bastard.
All right. Bye.
Sayonara, suckers.
So rude. So rude.